Jock Journal Radio. Jock Journal Radio brings you NFL Talk Late Night. Just two hardcore fans talking football after their kids have gone to bed, and they invite you to join our conversation. If there's a hot topic or even a cold topic, these chumps will be jawing it up every night. So leave those nudie sites alone and call us. And if you're lucky, they might give you my number. NFL Talk Late Night from Jock Journal Radio.
It's a happy new year for all you jock stars out there, and I'm sure you guys are like counting down the last few hours of 2015. It's been good to all, it's been good to most, but I think everybody's excited to see what 2016 has to offer. With that, I'm Nash.
And I'm Matt.
And you're listening to NFL Talk. So Matt, what are your big, bold predictions of 2016? Not just NFL, but just predictions all the way across the globe.
I'll save those towards later in the show and think about them.
Okay, all right. Then
you got any? What do you got?
Well, one of which I think that we're going to have probably the ugliest election in all of human history, with a lot of trash talking, slandering, all kinds of scandal, all kinds of things that's going to rip the nation into a funky place in 2016. That is my prediction.
That's a good one. I'm going to steer clear of our political talk. The last time we did it, screaming at each other. So
I think we ended up putting a shiv in somebody's rib cage.
And I think people didn't email into the show saying that they could not listen to me any longer. So,
yeah.
and usually that's actually weird. What I like. That's the emotion I like to instill in people. But with that area, I figured I should probably keep it down.
So, yeah. That's what we're going to be doing for Shock the Jock. So let's go to Shock the Jock.
So now that one of these asshats has nerve damage from the Shock the Jock, we play a little differently. They have a question, so surprise them with your answer. You could win money if it's shocking enough.
Okay, Jock stars out there in Radio Land, I'm sure you guys are excited to throw these out. We want to hear what your most bold predictions of 2016 are going to be. All you got to do is text us at 77948, type the word text, and then give us your biggest and boldest predictions of 2016. Now, there's tons of other ways to reach us. You can just email us at radio@jockjournal.com, or you could use those forms on jockjournal.com/JJR, or you could even go to Twitter, Facebook, all kinds of just different ways to get a hold of us. But the best way is to simply text us. We'll be checking the emails all the time, and we'll be checking the text line. It all comes to one nice little funneled place, and we'll read those out as we're beginning to have our debates on what we're going to be doing.
Let's get some good ones. I want to hear them. Will Nibiru come back? Planet X, does that show up?
Yeah.
What happens? Aliens finally reveal themselves as our long-lost ancestors?
That would be that would definitely be a really odd.
Let's just say this. That would be so awesome. I cannot wait for the day that aliens actually do that. All I want is enough time to call like 5 people and say, I told you so. That's it. Then obliterate it. I don't care. But I just want a couple minutes to call people.
I got one that is a really bold prediction, that we are going to have at least 2 major NFL stars come out as gay this year. Guarantee it.
Oh, that's a good one. I have a bold prediction for you for 2016. The Kansas City Chiefs finally make the Super Bowl.
Is that going to happen in 2016, or is that going to happen in the 2016 year, which will actually happen in 2017?
No, in 2016. That's what you just said. It's going to happen in the year of 2016.
Okay, then you know what? I've actually had the exact same bold prediction in my preseason bold predictions that the Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings were both going to play each other in a rematch, a Super Bowl II, is it? Where with the same score, Minnesota winning, and Kansas City still not having their first Super Bowl. But that was at the beginning of the year I made that prediction, and look at what's happened. I mean, both teams are relevant. We already have a text in. This is great from the 404. Todd Gurley will rush for 2,000 yards in 2016. That's from Ben Morale.
Oh, that's a good one.
Great pick. Yes, we dig it. We totally love it. We got another one here. I predict Caitlyn Jenner will turn back into a man. That's a great one.
That's a good prediction. That's a good one. I like it.
From the 702. And, guys, these are great because and keep them coming because this is possibly worth as much as $50 to you in a gift card. Bold prediction. The Jaguars will win a playoff game. that's pretty
That is bold.
We keep them coming, guys. We'll continue reading them. But before 2016 or 16 starts, 2015 has to end. And that's why it's a good idea for us to figure out, we've been having this debate for some time, who is the elite receiver of 2015? Who is that one receiver that you can throw the ball to and he will produce more with each pass tossed to him than any other receiver in the NFL? Matt, I'm curious. What's your thoughts on it? I think I might have lost Matt.
Nope. I just had it on mute and I'm retarded. So I felt it appropriate before we get into this debate. So here's the debate. I want to explain it to everyone. Nash loves to say the word elite. He just thinks it's fantastic to throw elite out there. He says elite like you and I would say good is a good player. He likes to say elite.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Here is the definition of elite. The choice or best of anything considered collectively. So when you're looking at a group, it's the best of that group.
Okay. So how do you measure it for wide receivers? Do you measure it in
the
the efficiency per target? Or do you measure it in yardage? How do you measure that?
I think it's a combination of a lot of those things. It has to be a combination. You can't just go off of one of those things because scheme dictates a decent amount of that. For instance, you're going to say Doug Baldwin is elite. I get it, and he's had a good year. That's your argument. Doug Baldwin, the receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, is elite, says Nash. I say he's not elite. I say he's had a great year, but I wouldn't give him an elite status. So here's the question. Is Doug Baldwin, and I believe a lot of his touchdowns are schemed that way because they don't have anyone else to go to. I don't think they have anyone that can produce very many touchdowns on the ground. They lost Marshawn Lynch, who was playing hurt most of the year. So they have to go to someone, and he's their only decent receiver. Now, look at someone like DeAndre Hopkins. So here's what you're going to say. DeAndre Hopkins, is he better than Doug Baldwin or not? Because he plays on a different team with a much worse quarterback. So his numbers, touchdowns, they barely scored any touchdowns, that team. So his numbers, as far as touchdowns go, are going to be far less, but he's got many more yards. Is he a better receiver than Doug Baldwin? Yes or no?
No, he's not a better receiver than Doug Baldwin. DeAndre Hopkins is not a better receiver than Doug Baldwin.
Okay. So, and I'm saying he is. I say that the top 5 this year, and by yardage, receiving yards, here's who, and this is, I'm going to say this is pretty close to what I would say is an estimate of who the elite receivers are in the NFL. It goes Julio Jones had 1,700 yards this year, Antonio Brown 1,647, DeAndre Hopkins 1,432, Odell Beckham 1,396, and then Brandon Marshall 1,376. Now, in standard ESPN league scoring in fantasy football, which, look, fantasy isn't an amazing indicator, but it does combine a lot of these things into a point metric where we can kind of estimate this. Doug Baldwin is 8th on the list of standard scoring receivers for the year. So that combines his touchdowns in as well. But he does fall behind a decent amount of these people that are on that list. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham. I wouldn't even consider Odell Beckham personally elite because I think he's too young yet. I think he still needs some time to prove himself to be an elite receiver. I would consider Julio Jones, Antonio, even DeAndre Hopkins. I'll say I don't think he's elite yet. He's still fairly young. But Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, and Brandon Marshall, I would consider elite receivers in the NFL. They're a nightmare to cover by anyone that wants to try and cover them. You can go to them. They can obviously catch the ball because they can get a decent amount of yards. So I would, and here's the other thing that you want to consider elite. Could you have just that receiver on a team and build an offense around them? These receivers that we're talking about on that list, you can do that. If you had a worse quarterback throwing to Doug Baldwin, if you didn't have Russell Wilson throwing to Doug Baldwin, could you put another quarterback in there, and would he have the same or a better year, and would he be able to offensively carry the Seattle Seahawks?
Okay. I hear what you're saying regarding the situation of like Doug Baldwin, but you take a look at it, the best receiver that started for the Seattle Seahawks wasn't actually a receiver. It was a tight end, and that was losing its effectiveness. In fact, before Jimmy Graham, get this, guys, last year, take a look at Jimmy Graham's stats, okay? Before Jimmy Graham was traded last year, they figured out something. Though his stats and his numbers as a tight end were extremely high, his effectiveness as a tight end was extremely low. 11 of the interceptions that Drew Brees threw last year were because he threw Jimmy Graham's way. Forcing a guy a ball and making him catch the ball by giving him a high number of targets doesn't mean you have a good receiver. It means you have a funnel. I don't think that's true.
I agree. I don't think that's accurate either. That makes sense.
And when you have 11 interceptions passing to one guy, more interceptions than you do touchdowns, you don't have a good receiver. You just have essentially a funnel for an offense. And that's why I think when you got players like DeAndre Hopkins, who received 181 targets and only had 104 receptions, 59% of the time, yeah, he completed it. But his yards after the catch, only 191 yards per the whole season. That's less than 2 yards.
I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is elite.
That's okay. But you
do a comparison against Antonio Brown. I would say in today's NFL, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, Brandon Marshall, I still consider elite, but he's tapering off. He's getting older, but he still had an excellent season.
He has.
But I would say Antonio Brown is the best definition of someone you could surefire say is elite. The guy can catch on anyone.
He is elite.
He can catch regardless of anybody out who's throwing him the ball. He can have a good game. That guy is a guy you could build an offense around. My point about Doug Baldwin is this. They don't have any, you just proved it, Jimmy Graham. They don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. They literally need to throw the ball to him if they want to get it. And you're basing it purely on touchdowns. And I know the other thing, completion percentage is what you're going to base it on.
Yes. Well, that is a huge part. When you throw a receiver a ball, you want him to catch it and do something with it. You don't just want a 2nd and 10 or a 3rd and 10 or a 4th and 10. You want some yards developed out of that particular player. And that's a no-brainer, right? Well, Doug Baldwin has only had 97 targets. That's why I place him as number 5 on the top receivers of 2015. I give it to Julio Jones being number 1, Antonio Brown being number 2, Odell Beckham Jr. being number 3, Brandon Marshall being number 4, and little Dougie Baldwin as number 5. And now listen to these statistics just for a second. 73 receptions on 97 targets, okay? If you think that that's not a big deal, that's 75%, okay? Closer to 74%, but I rounded up, okay? That's 74%, all right? That is huge when passing to a receiver. And in fact, I went through a statistical analysis. When he gets those 3 more targets, let's say he gets 2 catches, he stays on par, he gets 100 targets. Of at least 100 targets, somebody having 75 reception has not happened since Larry Centers, a fullback, receiving out of the backfield that kind of completion percentage. And this is happening with a 5'9", 5'10" little wide receiver just going out and catching passes from another 5'10", 5'11" quarterback. This is stellar production all the way across the board. Now, take a look at it. 390 yards receiving after the catch. Nobody has with less than, get this, with 70 receptions or 73 receptions or less. Only person who has more yards after the catch is Amari Cooper with 6, okay? He has 43 first downs out of his